What up, what up? I'm the Crate Digger. This is Studio to Stage. Studio to Stage is a development series which is designed to increase awareness of artists to standards, norms, and just different things to help increase the likelihood of success, efficiency, and quality. Now, this series has two sections, and each of those sections is divided up into three subsections. We have pre studio, in studio, post studio, then we have pre stage or pre show, on stage, and off stage or post stage. With that being said, all of the things that I share are based on decades of my time on stage and in the studio as a performer, DJ, producer, and much, much more. Listen, this is not all inclusive, nor are my suggestions the only way that things can be done. With that being said, I've seen a lot of ways that it shouldn't be done. Feel free to like, comment, and share. Let's get into it. We're in and we've completed our studio session. What does our post studio layout look like? First and foremost, financials. I suggest not leaving the studio, if possible, until you understand what is due at that time or when another payment is due, if anything is due. Also, be aware if there's any credits or balances owed to you. Whether that is, I bought a block of time and I didn't use the whole time. Do I get that credited back in a refund of that difference? Or do I say, hold on to it and I want to know of my 4 blocks that I still have 2.5 hours of that 4-hour block available to book in a future time? Too many people leave a studio session unclear on what their financial standing is with that studio. Try to avoid that if possible. Number 2, mixing. There's a lot of different things that can fall under this category, so I'm going to try to keep it clear but complete but simple. Are we having the studio do the mix downs, or are we going to have a different studio or a different engineer, or the mixing happen at a different time and or place? Understand what that is, or if that's part of what you're paying the studio for. When we do mix downs, and I say we in a general sense, I suggest being sure that you get 7 different versions of any song that you're doing. Now, once again, this is not all inclusive and this is not the only way, but I see too many artists walk out of the studio and complete mixing and still need work done. And then they have to go back, come out of pocket, and or pay a different rate because it's not part of their original agreement with the studio. What are those 7 versions? An LP or whatever version you see going on your album or full project. A radio or clean version. If I want to play this song in a place or on a station or on a platform that doesn't play profanity, do I have a clean version, if applicable, of this same song? Do I have an instrumental? Do I have a version of the song that doesn't have any lyrics and or chorus or vocal parts? Do I have an a cappella or lyric vocal only mix of that LP version or that album version? And do I have an a cappella or vocal only mix that's a clean or radio edit? All right. So the same way I want to have an album or LP version and a radio version, I want to have an album or LP a cappella as well as an a cappella for clean or a clean radio a cappella. I also suggest having a show track, which is basically the beat, or let me rephrase. A show or TV track, which is basically if I was going to perform this, I could play the track, but I would have certain selections of the song removed. For example, the lead vocal may not be part of your show track, but your ad-libs are. And a section of the chorus may be there, or the full chorus. So if I'm performing this in front of a live audience or doing a live performance, I can still perform the track, but I have some backing and or ad-libs along with the full musical track behind me. Now, if applicable, I may need to have a clean show track as well. If some of my ad-libs have profanity, or if there's profanity in the chorus or something, I may need to have a show or TV track that is also edited. All right. So once again, LP, radio, instrumental, acapella clean, acapella LP, show LP, and show clean are the 7 versions that I suggest getting mix downs for when you go into the studio. Now, once again, that's not all inclusive. That does not have to be done that way. It's what I suggest. And maybe it's not done, ideally, it's not done for every single song on an album. But if you know that a certain song may get released as a single, or if you're doing an EP, or if there's certain songs that you know you're going to record and perform, consider which of these songs may need whatever of these 7 versions suggested. The next thing, receivables. Basically, what am I getting back and how am I getting it back from the studio? If the studio is doing the mixing for you, you may want to submit mixing notes or references. What does that mean? You may want to tell the studio that you have a certain reverb setting or certain things that are very specific to your brand or creative idea that you want to make sure that they incorporate when they do their mixing passes. Depending on how much you've paid and what your agreement is with that studio, they may do a couple of mixes and you can do other edits and or notes to touch up before they give you a final mix. References. Sometimes we may not have all of the vocabulary to articulate very specifically what it is we want our song to sound like. But we can say, I like how in this song, and you give another song as a reference, the vocals sit above the snare. Or I like how this part of the song drops down or pans or whatever it is, but provide references of other songs so your mix engineer or whoever's going to be working on your song can help articulate and understand what it is you're trying to say if they don't fully understand your words or examples or explanation. They can listen to another song and better understand and use that as a reference or a comparison as they work towards your final product. What are your plans for mastering? There's a lot of different ways that mastering can happen. Everything from Ableton and Logic and a lot of these DAWs have their own mastering suites inside. There are standalone mastering suites and software. You can have it sent off to be mastered. Or if you plan on, for example, pressing up vinyl, you want to have something mastered with the intention of it being pressed to vinyl. All of those processes are not always exactly the same, but think about what are your mastering plans for your song and or full project, because that often helps the mix engineer or studio understand how to best prepare your work and session for the next phase. Metadata. There's a lot of different things that can go into the programming of your file. So when it goes to your digital streaming platforms or MP3s for DJs or onto your record or wherever it goes in its completed format, especially if that's a digital format, you want to have that metadata inputted and plugged into the file itself so you know that whenever the file moves, that information it goes along with it. Everything from when that track was created, who's the producer, composer, remixer, who wrote the lyrics, who's the song by, if there's a feature, all these different things that a lot of us will see in our iTunes or Windows Media Player. Like all of that background information can be inputted and made part of the actual file so that information travels with the file. The last thing we'll talk about in our post-studio space, I call it, DJs, tastemakers, kind of what is that, these DJ packs or tastemaker packs, or basically how are we going to put our music out? I say there's a couple of different things to consider. Once again, you don't have to do these things, but consider them. When it comes to DJs, a lot of us still rely on DJs to help break and push music from its being less known to more known. A lot of us still use playlists that are curated by different folks, whether they be actual DJs, platforms, what have you. Be sure that you are preparing your music to be as easy as possible for these DJs, tastemakers, and playlist curators, to use. All right. So you want to have your format of the file, whether it be an MP3, an AIF, a WAV file, whatever the file format. Make sure it's one that's very, very universal. All right. If you're thinking about sending this out to DJs specifically who use DVS, digital vinyl systems, think about doing things, once again, in the metadata of the file to make it easier for them to plug your song into their mixes. That means putting the tempo into the metadata. Those of you familiar with, Serato, for example, you can put cue points in to your file. So insert those cue points ahead of time so when the DJ loads the file up, they can see where the track starts, where the first verse comes in. They can see where the chorus may came in, second verse, bridge. If you have a kind of fade out or a vamp out at the end that can be looped, whatever that looks like to best, once again, when that DJ loads that track up, have you made that track easier for them to plug into their playlist? All right. Now, once again, we talked very, very, very basically about Spotify, Apple Music, et cetera, but DSP preparation, digital streaming platform preparation. When you have or are in the process of getting that file, that song, that recording ready to go on your DSPs, prepare your copyright. Think about cover art, because now you're going from an audio only platform to now having audio that has some visual element. All right. Once again, not all inclusive, and by no means is my way the only way, but that is my suggestions based on many, many years of doing it right, doing it wrong, and seeing a lot of people do it right and do it wrong. How to best prepare yourself pre-studio, in the studio, and post-studio. Once again, I'm Crate Digger. This is Studio to Stage. This is just our studio section. Feel free once again to like, share, comment, or add some questions down below. See you on the next page when we hit the stage. Peace and love. 1.